Okay, so when we bought this boat last year, we knew it had a couple of soft spots and probably some rot. And as you can see, once we pulled out the carpet, essentially the entire floor has got to go. So what we're going to do is use our Dremel tool, stepping into the boat here. And you can see that there's a bit of a line there. It looks like where there's the plywood. It goes all the way up into the back of the boat, up into the bow, rather. And all the way along the other side. And based on what I've seen inside of most YouTube videos, is that they're using I guess fiberglass and plywood to make the repairs. So I'm going to attempt to do the same thing, first by cutting out this existing section, and then hopefully being able to use that as a template for building out the new pieces of plywood that we've purchased for this. And you can see too that the back is in dire need of some repair as well. I'm hoping that the transom's in good condition. I will have a look at that as well. So the other consideration is we had that piece of fiberglass that we were using as our template, but we can also use the interior carpet that we pulled out, and obviously came out nice and clean. One thing that you'll note is this sort of came right up to the very edge of where we think the plywood would go, because this is where the front part of the bow of the boat would be screwed in. So that's that 8 inches that I talked about earlier in the video. And then of course we have like a couple of locations where our seats are supposed to go, and then this hole in the middle of the boat. I'm sure someone who is a boater would know exactly what that hole is. Bilge hole maybe, or something like that, I don't know. And then this is the area where the back seat was originally screwed down, and then you can see where the battery was sitting, the post for the ski pole, and then this is where the gas tank was sitting on here. And you can see like a couple of the markers where there was clamps that were marking down the or holding down the gas tank. But this ended at the very back, did not end right at the very back of the boat. There's another few inches back here that we would expect to have in terms of additional wood. So it may be even that we, you know, cut one large piece. I'm thinking if we cut, say, from back here, or well, yeah, probably from back here, that we can take one large piece, slide it underneath the bow, that one piece of fiberglass at the bow of the boat, to lay this thing in flat. But this should give us, I would think, a pretty good outline of the piece of lumber that we're going to need to construct our new floor. Okay, so we've done our best to cut through most of the floor of the boat. You can see what we did is cut through the fiberglass, and it seems like a cut in the right place where that line was. You can see, I'll show a little bit closer. There's a bit of a dip where the plywood was set in, and so we've now gone through virtually all of the boat. There's a little bit at the bow that's going to be a little bit fiddly to get into, but that rot only goes up about another, like if we go under here, it goes right to the end there, and that's maybe another, you know, 8 inches of maybe 8 to 10 inches of plywood that would ultimately go underneath that. You can also see that I don't know what these are called, but you know, runners or whatever go inside are coated on the outside with fiberglass sheathing, but then these are also all rotted through. So what we're going to do is keep the fiberglass in place. I'm not going to take that out. And we're going to use it as a guide when we're dropping in our new runners along the length of the boat. And you know, obviously there's a lot of cleanup to do here. It's a little bit hard to tell what's what in here, really. But we've basically gone through the entire outside of the boat and cut through the bulk of the fiberglass and the wood. Have not touched the outside of the boat, fortunately. So that is one thing to be aware of for sure. Don't put your cutting depth too deep. Mine was quite shallow. In fact, I had to take a couple of passes over the fiberglass, and I was also conscious that, you know, in here, let me see if I can do a little zoom. Here we go. I did one cut across the back there where the where the bilge pump is, and you can see that it looks like the wood ends actually right where I sort of guessed that it might be. So about, well, I'm going to say that that's maybe, maybe an inch thick. I did the same thing on both sides there. That still has to get a little bit more cutting through. The fiberglass really was not all that thick in there, and you can see that even back there, that the fiberglass is, back again. There's about another 1.5 inches in behind that fiberglass where the wood's going to have to go in the future. So anyway, big chunks of this done. I'm going to saw through a few more pieces. So I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not, but I figured it's certainly not going to hurt. These are the 3/4 inch plywood pieces that I'm going to be using inside of the boat. And you can see the boat's all the way down there at the dock with the red tarp on it. So what I've done is I've just basically used a sealer primer to go over top of both sides of the plywood, a couple of coats each, just to fill in any cracks and holes. And I'm going to do the same thing around the edges once I have cut edges as well. Just run the roller over top of the cut edges. Hopefully with the idea that that prevents any moisture from getting in there in any sort of meaningful manner, and at least block out a good portion of what potential moisture may go in there. Okay, so a quick update on the interior of the boat. I'm going to cut the rails. I've already vacuumed things out, gotten rid of all of the debris that was sort of in between the cracks there. And you might recall, I'm just going to zoom in here, that what we talked about doing was using that rail there as a guideline, or the fiberglass there is a guideline for a rail. Still a little bit of dampness there. I've had it out in the open air for a while now. I think we'll get most of the dampness out. But what we basically measured was, the boats probably, or the rails would probably be about 9 feet long. We're using 8-foot sheets of plywood. So I'm actually just going to take this thing up, sort of just underneath there to the back part of the boat over here. There's really no reason for me to go any further back. I don't think. Certainly structurally, nothing concerning me. So the only other piece then is that obviously this whole interior section here is going to get filled with foam, which we have plenty of spray foam that we're going to drop into there. Expanding foam. So basically at this end, we're about the height of the rail needs to be about 5.5 inches. And at this end, it's about 4.5 inches. So what we're going to do is do a 5.5 to 4.5 over 8 feet as our length of our rails. All right, I've got my 2 runners cut from 5.5 to 4.5. And I just thought we'd walk over to the boat there, just give these things a little bit of a dry fit and see if I've done this right. So no real surprises here, trying to do a dry fit here. And you can see that the width of this plywood probably is just a smidge wider than the fiberglass around it. So this is going to be a game of, millimeters, frankly, or thousandths of an inch for the Americans watching this. So all that to say, I don't think this is going to be like a test fit. I think it's going to be a commitment. So I think what I'm going to do is take these guys back. I'm going to paint up the edges here. You can see this cut edge. I want to paint that up. I did investigate purchasing some what they call marine plywood. And the feedback that I got from the guys at the shop was really just that marine plywood has fewer of these things here. You can see like these little pockets, these little gaps. And that's where water gets in. So really, the guy said, that, technically speaking with marine plywood, there are fewer of these, but they're not necessarily immune. And so all that to say, he says, just get regular plywood because it's significantly less money for the purposes that you're using it for. And then just, use a sealer, primer, or whatever to fill in the gaps where you can. So we're just going to take this back, give these boards a really good painting. And then I think we're going to use the motivator to wedge it into those little bits there. It may be into this little trough, and it may be that we have to cut some of the fiberglass back even a little bit further. Again, a bit of a nuisance, particularly over here where I know we have quite, here I have quite a bit more fiberglass down at the bottom that it didn't cut all the way down. But anyway, all that to say, I'm not going to worry about it too much. You can see at the back there, maybe if I just sort of focus in over there, that's the rot is essentially gone. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about the structural integrity of the boat, given the size that this is, and how we're going to be affixing the rest of the floor in here as well. It's not going to go anywhere, that's for darn sure, at least not in my lifetime. Not the lifetime of the use of this boat. Use the vacuum, of course, for cleaning out the debris. Anyway, let's go give this thing a paint job and come back in an hour or two and fit this thing in. Okay, totally an aside here, but when you're putting together your boat and fixing the floor, nothing quite as nice as a piece of toasted pumpernickel with feta and tomato. Totally random, totally out there, but just saying, this is a good combination when you're fixing your boat. I've got one other little minor note. You'll see here, right near the beginning of the bow there, it starts to curve up just a slight bit. And really, right here within like the last, I'm gonna say like the last 6 inches or so, where we kind of expect our board to end, it goes from 5.5 up to 5. So I'm just gonna cut like a little, curve, I think, that cuts into the wood just a little bit. Anyway, we'll do that, and then we'll drop this in. Just an aside, in case you're wondering how I cut the, how I cut these boards straight, I basically just took the other piece of plywood and I did my measurements and just used this as my guide for the saw, counting in the case of my skill saw, an additional 1.5 for the guard. So so basically that's all I did, is just clamp this down, used it as a guide, and just ran the saw along there nice and slow. And I think got like a decent cut out of it. Anyway, so we're just going to wait for the paint to dry on these now cut ends. Use my little Dremel saw for that one down by the boat, and then paint it along the full edge again. Now, tapping this thing into place means that I'm probably going to, I can only imagine that it's going to interrupt some of the paint jobs. So maybe doing a lot of work for nothing. But anyway, we'll see what happens and go from there. I'm going to check this again. But you may recall that we did two things. We kept the carpet, which is sitting over there. That's the interior carpet. That will tell us where a number of our different holes are going to go. Then I also kept the long sheet of fiberglass that we cut out from the edge of the boat last time. So I'm going to go back and just double check where we sort of cut from the top here, because we sort of cut that straight across right by the bow of the boat, but I think a few inches back from where the end is. So this should basically give us the outline that we need to cut for the interior replacement. For all intents and purposes, it'll be just fine. And I might even just cut back just a little bit more than what this template has, only because I think the fiberglass went a little bit further over than the actual materials itself. So probably the next step, and something I'm not prepared for this weekend, is to refiberglass certain aspects of the boat, and that is to bring the fiberglass from the side of the boat, which would be right in and around here, and then overlapping it onto our plywood. So haven't really planned for that yet, and I'm not going to worry about it, but I may just get this piece cut and sort of dry fit today, just so that I've got it ready to go. So sorry for my Michael Bay camera skills. Anyway, that's it, and we'll do some cutting. I'm going to take those over once they're dry, a couple of minutes, and shoehorn them into the boat. Despite my best efforts to even carve back that fiberglass a little bit, I think that it's really, we're just going to have to put like a 1/2 inch material in there. This 3/4 ply is just, frankly, just going to be too much shoehorning in, frankly, for it to fit properly. So we're going to come back next weekend with, we'll buy some, gosh, I don't know, we'll get some sort of hardwood, I would think, and use that, use 1/2 by 6, then cut it down to the appropriate size, maybe even get a 10-footer so we can go a little bit deeper. Anyway, and that will, I think, fill in those rails nicely. And then we'll just use this material here. We'll cut it back a little bit and add an extra side to it for a place to screw in screws when we put the flooring in. Anyway, I think that's a wrap for today. So I've given the rails, what I ended up doing actually, instead of buying like new wood, I just brought in my planer, and near the bottom there you can see what I've done is planed down just the edge that has to dovetail into that little groove that was there before. I've done that on both sides, and so I just want to do a dry fit. I've sort of tapped it in with the hammer obviously, and then a block so that I didn't damage the edges. So what I'm going to do is take this out. It seems to be fitting the way that I want. So I'm going to take this out now and paint up those edges so that you know, they're as protected as they can be. And then we'll set it in. We'll put it in with glue, and I think what we're going to do is just screw it into the fiberglass along the edge there and clamp it and see where we end up. Okay, what we're going to do next is we've avoided a little bit of rain. There's the boat down there. Going to do a little bit more work, but we're going to peel off a couple of strips here, 2.5 inches deep, just to accommodate for the screws that we're going to be putting in as we screw down the new floor. And you know, hopefully this will just give us like a little bit of extra width that we can screw the floor into. Okay, so I started this process just by putting down a bead of construction adhesive. I'm going to take that piece down there, that little strap, and I'm going to put it up on the side of this right here so that we got some extra stuff to screw into when we're putting our floor in. Okay, so we have the rails in there and painted. We have a couple of like minor rails to inset this, that's the back side of it, but that's the cover basically that goes in there. And it's really just like another storage place for stuff, but I don't see us using it, so I think I may not even include it, frankly, when we put in the new floor. So we're going to go over and we're going to cut our floor now using the fiberglass template, and that should take us right up underneath the bow there, and then we're going to screw it down. Okay, so here we are. We had a bit of some weather yesterday, so just in the nick of time we got the plywood sheet dropped in, and very sunny out here, so you see like a lot of contrast in the shadows and things like that. But basically we got our floor in, and you can see what we did is screw down on each of the ways along each of the rails on both sides there. What we're going to do next is just we're going to clean up here, obviously get rid of some of the sawdust. What we did do when we got this slid underneath the bow a little bit, and you can see that we almost reached the I don't know if you can see that or not. We did come very close to the very end. We did get it underneath the lip of the bow here, though, which is great. But it was a little bit of there's a little bit of extra material there, so we just ended up sawing it off using our little Dremel saw. And our next step then is just going to be to you know, clean this up a little bit, and then fiberglass along the edges. Okay, so one of the things that we did in advance was we were planning on putting the old carpet back in, but we kind of laid it in here just to see if it would fit nicely. It really did, and it's pretty old. We're going to replace the carpet, but what I did do is I used the holes in the existing carpet to sort of draw a template of where different components were going to go. So that's where the captain's chair goes. There's a passenger chair there. We got the ski pole mount goes back there. And we got lockdown for the gas tank, and then a couple of locations there for the battery. So at least gives us a bit of an indication of where things used to go and what else we need to do in order to keep this thing nice and secure. So our next step is going to be to run fiberglass along the edges here, just to sort of tighten everything up together. Never done this before. This is going to be new. I'm not going to worry about whether it's sloppy or not, because eventually we are going to put a new piece of carpet over top of it. And the kit that we're using here is just a Bondo kit. Nothing fancy, I don't think. It's just a fairly straightforward instructions. You have to make a bit of a mix, blend it together. Got a little putty knife there, brush to brush it on, and away we go. Apparently it sets in about a couple of hours, so we should be out in the lake this afternoon. Okay, so I was just reading the instructions on the fiberglass, and it talked about there being like, make sure there's removal of paint and any dirt and so on. So actually what I did is just used our planer, went around the outside of the wood just to take off a little bit of the edge, and then at least we'll have something, you know, right to bond onto with the fiberglass. Okay, the fiberglass is basically dry now. It's been out for about an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. And what we've done is gone along and drilled holes every I'm gonna say every 18 inches or so. And that's where we're gonna inject our foam. And then this, we've got a couple of extra holes here because that was that little piece that takes out water from the hull into the back by the bilge pump there. So we got a few holes to fill, and we'll just see. These are basically big open channels all the way along, and we're just going to use our spray foam throughout, and just to see if we can fill in all of these gaps. So we have the floor in. Carpet was not going to work, obviously. We got the motor running. I'm going to take it up for a spin. Everything's back where the places it belongs in. And I think that's about the end of it. Seats didn't line up with the carpet according exactly, so or I guess they didn't according to the plan. So we're gonna have to adjust those after the fact when we put the new carpet, but not a big deal either way. We're gonna take it up for a quick spin.